Hey Maxleets, today we're going to focus on the deadlift. We're going to talk about how to perform it, what muscles are being worked, and some common mistakes that we run into. Now keep in mind we're only focusing on the regular deadlift, we're not focusing on any variations of the deadlift right now. The deadlift is basically one of the most commonly used functional movements that you will ever see. It works your quadriceps, hamstrings, glutes, inner thighs, abdominals and obliques, erectors, rhomboids, traps, and your lats. If you're not familiar with any of those muscles, just know that it works a lot of them. So this is a great exercise to really utilize. Okay, so if you're using a barbell, the first thing you want to do is walk right up till your feet are underneath the bar. Breathe all of your air out. Then you're going to hinge at the hips, bringing your arms down. Now notice my feet are hip width apart, so as I bend over, my arms, especially the inner part of my forearm, is rubbing up against the outside of the knee. So this is the distance that my arms need to be when I grip the bar. Notice that my hip is lower than my head, my torso is in a neutral spine position, my shin bone or tibia is vertical, or slightly, you'll notice the knees are slightly forward. And then I drive from my heels, picking up the bar. So as the bar starts to come up, you'll notice I'll pull straight up, and as soon as it passes my knees, I then bring my hip forward. And as I bring my hip forward, my shoulders go back, and then my shoulders, hips, and ankles are all in a vertical alignment at the top of the movement. Notice the side view here as I start to use my abdominals. This part is very important. You want to make sure you're using your abdominals to pick up the weight, not your back. Although you are working your posterior, it's your abdominals that you need for the deadlift. To ensure that vertical alignment, squeeze your glutes and your abs at the top of the movement. Here's some common mistakes that you'll probably see when it comes to the deadlift. So one is overarching your back. So this is where people don't engage their abdominals and you see that they have this hyperextension in the back. So much so that their shoulder starts to go all the way back behind the hip when they pick it up. What this does is this definitely puts a huge, ooh, that's a terrible looking face that I have there just now. I do not like my workout face. Anyway, this is the problem here, is that you're putting a lot of emphasis on your lower back at the expense of everything else. You can seriously damage your back here because you're not utilizing your abdominals to perform this movement. Another common mistake here is lack of full hip extension. As you can see here, you'll notice how I don't fully stand all the way up. My shoulders are still kind of in front of my hips when they're supposed to be packed on top of my hips. You want a proper full hip extension when you're doing this. This can have tremendous problems when it comes to your lower back simply because you're not doing that full hip extension. So this one here I like to call the stripper deadlift. This is where people straighten their legs or lock their knees and then pick up the weight instead of actually picking up the weight the same time as when the legs are starting to straighten. You see, when the bar passes the knees, that's when you should be bringing the hips forward. If you're starting to straighten, you're putting more stress on your back once again. Now the problem with this is that if you're dealing with a heavy weight, it leads to the next common mistake, overly rounding your back. Most of the time this happens because the weight is too heavy for you and you cannot manage it. See, with the overly rounded back, there is no engagement of your lats, which is what you need to be able to pick up this weight. Also, overly rounding your back can also hurt your lower back as well, because although it looks like you're engaging your abs, you may not necessarily be doing that. In any case, you're probably just hurting yourself. So please make sure you have a neutral spine when you're performing this movement. If you're picking up something other than a barbell, let's say a slam ball or a weighted ball, you want to be able to pick it up the same way. So instead of having the ball between your knees, you want to make sure it's slightly in front of your ankles so that as you grab, your shoulders, elbows, and wrists are in that vertical alignment as you're picking it up. And then as it passes your knees, you drive your hips forward, squeezing your glutes and your abdominals at the top of the movement. Remember to keep a neutral spine and drive from the heels when you're picking up the weight. Thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, you max your life.